And I'm going to go back off cam. That's what I do, but don't worry, I'm here though.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Natividad, will you be letting them in?
Ready to go?
Yeah, I think so. Let's go.
Okay, I'm letting them all in right now and closing the waiting room.
Okay.
Let's go. Oops. Admit all and closing.
I am.
Hello. Okay, hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to Destination Space 2022. Remember me? I'm Andres Martinez. I'm a NASA engineer. Remember, NASA is in your neighborhood. We're about 10 minutes away. And we're having these sessions where we're inviting some incredible engineers and scientists because we want them to tell you what they do and, give you a little bit of information about themselves, because we know that you're eager to know, lots and lots of information about future careers, right? You're probably thinking of being a marine biologist or a NASA engineer, and you have questions. Well, this is why we're inviting these top-notch engineers and scientists so they can come and talk to us. All right, so today we are very, very lucky. Today we have Dr. Bogomolni, who is a community scientist, as well as many other is a naturalist, an artist, a biologist, a conservationist, and she has a passion for the ocean. She was with us a year ago, and she's back. She is incredible. She's going to be talking to us about seals as sentinels of ocean health. Dr. Bogomolni will be sharing insights into what we're learning about the role that seals play in our ecosystem, what seals tell us about ocean health, and how we study these amazing animals. She has been working with a range of collaborators, from fishermen to artists. She claims to understand not just seals, but our human relationship with the natural world and ways we can help preserve, protect, and sustainably make use of the limited resource nature provides. Everyone, please help me welcome Dr. She also goes by Dr. Dre, which I really, really love. So everyone, please help me welcome Dr. Dre. She's gonna be talking to us about seals. All right, now remember, let's all be courteous. Keep your microphones turned off, muted, because you're gonna have the opportunity to ask questions at the end. Okay, so while she's presenting, please keep your mics muted. All right, thank you. Welcome, Dr. Dre.
Thank you. It's so great to be here. And let me share my screen and say hi to everybody. This is always fun to make sure my screen works. Hold up. Let me see if I can get this in our presenter mode. All right, can you see that okay, Andres? Is that good?
Yes.
Awesome. Yay. Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm always excited to share my passion and my love for the ocean and for seals. And this other part of planet Earth, when we think about our universe that's so important, which is the ocean. So the ocean often gets forgotten about how important it is when we talk about NASA and space, right? But the planet itself and the oceans are so incredible. And I'm so lucky to be able to study these really interesting animals that live on our planet, and then as well the relationship that we have as people, learning about it and living in this natural world. So I'm incredibly happy to be here and so excited I get to share something that I am so passionate about. But first, I wanted to give you a little bit about myself and how I ended up studying seals. I get that question a lot. How on earth did you study seals of all things that we have? And it's an interesting path to how I got there, and hopefully can give you an idea too, or many ideas about how you might be able to do something similar or study something you like and some of the differences and the similarities we all might have. So I first wanted to say that right now I'm sitting on the East Coast of the United States on a place near Boston is kind of where I'm close to. But I grew up close to where you all are in San Francisco, or right outside San Francisco on the West Coast. But I also spent a lot of time down in the Southern Hemisphere in Argentina. That's where my family's from, so I speak Spanish. And I spent much of my time down there. And then I would go back to California, so not too far from where you guys are. It was a lot of fun. And as I grew up, I realized I also wanted to study animals. And I went to school, I went to college, and I went to UC Davis, which is not too far from where I grew up. And after that, I thought, I really love this idea of exploration. And there's this place across the country called the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution in the town of Woods Hole. So I went to do more school, and I started studying seals in graduate school at the Boston University Marine Program. And I decided, well, I really like marine life and I love marine mammals. What else can I do? So I started working with a group called the Cape Cod Straining Network, and I learned how different animals live and how they die and what we can learn from them. And it was such an amazing experience. And it led me to actually work in that place that I always loved and was interested in. And I ended up working for the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. So it was really a dream come true. And I also started working around the world. And I put a picture of the world up here because I want you to think about the opportunities that are out there, just past where you live. There's so much out there. And I started working in the Caribbean Ocean on Caribbean marine mammals and working with people there to understand how animals live and how people interact with them as well. So then I decided to do some more school, and I did something called a PhD, so I could be Dr. Dre. I always say that's why I got my PhD. And I think in total, I might have had 26 or 27 years of school. So that's 26 grades. And I decided to go back and study my seals because that's really where my passion was and my interest. And when I got out of school, I started a group called the Northwest Atlantic Seal Research Consortium. And it's a group that's out there, not just understanding seals, but the relationship that many people have with seals, including fishermen and artists and landowners. And I love teaching at the same time. So I still teach at the Shoals Marine Lab. And there's a picture of me with a camera looking at seals and the fishing boat that I also work off as well. And this led me to something really different and interesting of how could I put all these pieces together and help other people understand our ocean and do the work they love. So I currently work in a field we call philanthropy, which is really just helping people in this extraordinary way. So there's so much you can do. And I'm always happy to talk about what could you possibly do and how can you get there. But more important, we're here for seals. And I'm so excited to give you some background about the animal that really got me hooked, completely hooked on marine science and learning about our world, which are these little animals here. And where I live out here on the East Coast of the United States, we have two very common seals that we see. One is called a gray seal, the really big one in the back, and a harbor seal, the smaller one in the front. Those are two different species. And the one in the back is a gull. And I put not a seal, just a gull. And these two animals are the ones that I mainly study. We also have animals that come to visit that are seals that we call winter visitors, and they come high up north from the Arctic. And they are harp seals, hooded seals, and ring seals. And all of them are incredibly interesting, and we're learning so much about them. But these two right here, these are the two cast of characters in my stories that I like to study and that we see a lot of. So how do we study the life of a seal? I mean, these animals are really big. Some of them can be 800 pounds. You can't just say, hi, I want to study you, come here. So how do we do it? How would you study an animal that you can't put your hands on? You can't just pick up very easily. Well, there's ways we can do it. And my favorite part to talk about is that we can use things that we are passionate about that sometimes aren't thought about as science. We can use art, photography, writing, poetry, all different ways to really understand and observe these animals. And one of my favorites is that we get to take pictures of seals. And taking pictures of seals and using photography is one extremely important tool that we can use. And for a lot of people, this is a hobby or it's fun, but it's a really important scientific tool as well to understand these animals, because we can't just go and pick them up. Sometimes we put cameras on machines that we call drones. They're flying cameras. And this is another way that we can use technology and engineering to understand the life of seals. So what I'm doing is I'm waiting to hold on to this drone, this machine that has a camera right underneath it. And when this goes up, we can take pictures from high up. And what do you think a seal from above is going to look like? This is a seal in the water, right? But from above, this is what they look like. They're very small, but if you get in close from these pictures from above, you can see that there's some surprises, and these surprises are amazing once you start looking and observing. And what we see is that we can actually see pups, the little baby seals next to their moms. So all of a sudden, these pictures from far away are becoming a picture or almost like a family album, right, of what animals are there and what individuals can we see. So it's really incredible. And every day we learn something new. There's another way that scientists and researchers study seals, and this one is always entertaining for me when we take pictures. Sometimes you'll take a picture and there'll be something on the animal that isn't natural, that a person put there. And these are called brands and tags. And if you look closely in some of these pictures, you'll see here there's a green tag, and down here there's an orange tag. And up in the corner, there's a yellow hat actually on the seal right here. That's a hat. And down below here, there's numbers, and those are brands. And that's what this tag looks like up in the corner. It has a little number on it. And this is one way that researchers, when they have their hands on these animals, can go back, use a camera or binoculars, and see if you can see the animal once again. So resighting it. It's a little bit like a book called Where's Waldo? And that's what we look for these seals. We see if we can find them again. And some seals, we don't even have to get our hands on and we'll know who they are. This is one of my absolute favorite seals, and his name is Mr. T. And there's a reason for it. And I'm going to give you a second to look at these pictures and think, why is his name Mr. T? Maybe you guys can figure it out. I'll give you a second. So hopefully this stands out when you're looking at these pictures. There's a little T, and that's natural. That's just a marking. It's comes in this fur. Its whole life it has this marking. So it's like a birthmark, and it's there throughout Mr. T's whole life. So we can just look for Mr. T year after year, and we've seen Mr. T for 10 years straight. And so we know who it is and that he's an individual. So it's really neat. And you can also see what you see if you're ever by a beach and see a seal with a tag or a number or a Mr. T, and you can report it to the site called Marine Animal Identification Network, or MAIN is what we call it. And it's a website that you can actually report these sightings and look for tags. So you can do the science as well if you see something, if you're out on the water. So catching seals, as I said, is really difficult. It's hard. They're big animals, but we try. We like to try as scientists to do hard things, right? We can go to space, we can catch a seal. And that's what we actually have done. We did the first capture, we call it, of big gray seals. And again, these gray seals are really big in 2013. And it's the only time we've ever done this with adults, a lot of them. And it's so fun and it's so incredibly exciting. It takes a lot of people. So one of the lessons I learned about being a scientist, which I love, is it's really great to work together. So it took over 20 people to do these captures so we could look at these seals. And we all work together and we all are a team so that we can actually make this work. And it is an extraordinary experience to have a team like that. It's a big classroom of people working together. So it takes a lot of muscle sometimes and effort and different skill sets so that we can bring each of these little seals to the beach And this is a seal right here, and we're understanding its health. We're looking at its blood pressure, looking at temperature, all the things that you would look at if you went to the doctor, we look at with these seals. And if we're lucky and we are successful, we actually put a little tag on the seal. And this tag is very much like your cell phones. And that's exactly what it does, is it reports back and calls an object that gives us information, a satellite, to say what's happening with this animal and where does it go. So it kind of calls home, which is really cool. And this information that we get is so amazing. Every seal, every single time, teaches us something different. And this seal went and did really extraordinary things, as well as his buddies that we tagged. We tagged 9. And this is just to give you an idea of how far these animals travel. This is like thousands of miles round trip that these animals can do far out into the ocean. And by putting these tags and then just letting them swim and do their thing, we can understand where they go. So it's really extraordinary when you work together, use some really cool technology, and understand the lives of these animals in ways that only using these tags can give us. It's really neat. But this has to be my absolute favorite way to study seals. It's catching baby seals. So I don't know if you can tell here, but my friend Beth is holding very gently. She's not sitting on it. She's carefully restraining it. This is a little baby seal. And these baby seals are very small. They might be 40 pounds, so not more than a dog, maybe, if you have a big dog, just to give you a size. And I like them because they're definitely more my size than the 800-pound animals. And we learn as much as we can from these little seals that grow up to be very big seals. And this is a gray seal pup right here, and it's a photo taken by my friend Milton, and I think it's just amazing. And he's a wonderful photographer and scientist, and really wanted to share his images because they're amazing. And this is what we do when we take data from what we capture. So we're taking data as scientists, even from these animals. And this is a data sheet, and we fill out this data sheet to get information that we can look at many, many animals and compare. And what we do is we take swab samples. We're looking for viruses, we're looking for bacteria. We put little swabs in its nose. Maybe some of you have had that done. We take swabs of all kinds of different parts of the animal. And then what we also do is we take a blood sample so we can learn from it. And you remember those tags? You remember that tag that was in those pictures, that green tag? We put those on there, and that's what this tag looks like. And that's its back flipper, its hind part. And it's really important to put on so that if we see this animal again, we'll know who it is. And then we get a sample that is really important to me that's often forgotten, and that's poop. Sometimes we get the best sample that gives us a lot of information, and we call that scat, or poop samples from a seal. So we take everything we can get, length, weights, samples, and we do it very quickly because we want these animals to be happy and healthy when we release them again and go on their way. So that's definitely, I would say, my favorite way to study seals. But why? Now is the question why. So before we can ask those questions about how, or once we figured out how we can actually get these animals, why? Why do we study seals? And why have I spent 26 grades, right, of my life trying to understand that and more? So seals to me are a way that we can understand health, and not just the health of an animal, but the health of the entire ecosystem, the entire ocean, your life actually, and where you live, no matter where you live. These seals can tell us something. And what they're telling us is the title of my talk, and I'll talk about their sentinels. And they tell us about plastics and garbage and warming oceans, viruses, sometimes noise, overfishing, all these different threats to the ocean and ourselves. Seals can tell us something about it that no other group of animals can. And it's incredibly interesting when we start listening and paying attention to what they're saying. So what is a sentinel? This is a word I've used a couple times, and this is the dictionary definition, and it is a person or thing that watches or stands as if watching, a soldier stationed as a guard to challenge all comers and prevent a surprise attack, to stand sentinel. So think of these guards that are protecting something or someone or some place. And that's what seals do. They're sentinels to let us know what those threats are. And this is a beach, and all those little black dots right there, those are seals, but they're not just seals, they're sentinels. So when I see all these seals on a beach, I get very excited because it means that we have this amazing animal, this organism that we can start paying attention to and understanding. And this is what it looks like when you start zooming up closer to those black dots. And this is what it looks like when you get even closer. So I promise you, every one of those black dots are one of these little gray seals or harbor seals. And this is what they look like. But that is extraordinary to me because it means we have a lot of opportunity to understand in these different individuals how the ocean, things that we put in there might affect them. And I didn't know if maybe you had ever seen a seal actually move or walk or interact. And I didn't want to assume. So I wanted to try and play a little bit of this. It also has how seals sound. So hopefully this will work. Hear that? Those are seals. Isn't that incredible? Stop that. That is how a seal sounds, and that's a group of gray seals. And it's really incredible, and it's something that's very unexpected to people. So in my story about seals and why I keep saying they're incredible and they're fascinating, the reason that I really started studying them as sentinels is because of this one story. And these stories are so important because they've really led me on a path to try and understand why these animals are important and why it's so important to share with others. When I was doing my graduate work, when I was in grade 21, maybe, I decided I was going to look at seals. And I was working with a woman who was in Sweden, and she was also looking at seals. And we were talking together. And she said to me, oh, my seals here, a living seal is considered toxic waste. There's so many contaminants in it that we consider them toxic waste. And I was shocked that this is what she told me about. And this is where Sweden is, where that star is. And this is the location. And she said that these seals in the Baltic had donated by phenols, that they were so sick that they couldn't even throw them out because they were considered toxic waste. What happens with these PCBs, these man-made contaminants, is that many of the female seals had cancer, and there was a decrease in the number of babies or pups that they were able to have. And it wasn't until people started looking at seals that they realized, wow, this contaminant could be very dangerous to people as well. So these seals, in this case, were sentinels for us to do something about it. And the good part of that story is that people did do something about it because they understood what was happening to seals. And it's not just seals that these animals are, or humans that these seals are sentinels for, but for other animals as well. These are obviously not seals. These are killer whales, or orcas, we call them. And these are animals that are very hard to study. You definitely can't just go pick one up and put a tag on it very easily. So how do we study them? How do we understand what's happening in our oceans and to these animals? Well, there's an amazing researcher. His name is Peter Ross. And he really wanted to know what was happening with these PCBs in these killer whales. And he knew that these numbers were very high. And these numbers were so high that he's like, something has got to be happening to these animals, just like the seals. So he was able to get harbor seals. So harbor seals are smaller. We can put them in some tanks and let them go again. And he fed these harbor seals the same fish that these killer whales were eating. And he found out that at this very low number, we're going to say 17. So remember that number 17, we say parts per million. Harbor seals had toxic effects. We say immunotoxic effects. And that's what I studied for a very long time, was how our immune system is affected by these contaminants. And at 17, these harbor seals were seeing these very bad effects. But these killer whales had 300 of these things, 300 parts per million. So by looking at seals, we could infer what was happening to these killer whales. And it really made a difference in trying to stop what was coming into our oceans. And it's very important because the way that these harbor seals were able to get these contaminants and killer whales is from what they eat. And we eat very similar things to what seals and killer whales eat. And that becomes a really crucial part to this story and why it's so important to look at these animals. So what we learned from that is that seals and killer whales, right, are affected by what they eat. they eat things in the ocean that we also eat. So we start connecting the dots. And again, this is how these animals are sentinels to what's happening in our world. They tell us something important. And it's often very easy to think about, well, a seal eats a fish, therefore it's that easy. But we have to remember that our ecosystems are very complex. Our oceans are complex, our land's complex. And it's not as simple as saying that I eat a fish or a shark eats a fish and that's it. This is what we call a food web, this picture here. And in this food web, we have all these different animals. We have top predators like sharks. We have what we call mesopredators, and that's where our gray seals fit in. And we have fishes, and we have invertebrates, and we have phytoplankton. And these seals play such an important role. I wanted to show you this because the seal fits right here, right in the middle. And there's all these links to the seal. You can see it from the top, from the bottom, from the sides. They're so important in our ecosystem, and what they eat is important as well as what might eat them, right? We have to remember that things also eat seals. So they become really important in the story to understand because they link everything together. So even though sharks also eat seals, there's many other effects of the ocean itself, and seals are part of this bigger ecosystem. So seals also tell us something else about our oceans that people don't necessarily think about seals with. Most people think about polar bears or cold water animals, and that's climate change and global warming and warming waters. But seals are really important to the story and tell us so much. So polar bears are important too, very important, but seals can tell us a lot as well. A couple of years ago, there's something called the Pacific blob, and it sounds really scary and ominous, and it was a little bit scary, but what it was there was really, really warm water off the coast of California and up to Alaska. And this warm water, you can see here in this picture right here, was really intense. And it was seals that were affected by it a lot. And it wasn't until we started seeing these effects in seals that people really started paying attention. And when the ocean is too warm, the sea lion moms couldn't find enough fish to eat because the fish would move, and they couldn't give milk to their pups. And so this was the effect, and the seals were telling us there's something wrong. And this is what was happening. They were coming onto the beaches really small and really sick. And the people, fortunately, there's a lot of people that care out there and want to do something about our oceans, right, to make it better, like me and you. And that's what happened. So there was a big group of people that went out. These are all little sea lions, actually, that were rescued in this location, and they were able to be released. And if you can see here, there's a little tag on there, and that tag told us that these animals were able to survive and make it by themselves in the wild. So good people, good end to the story, which is fantastic. There's other threats in our oceans that are new, or I should say have been there for a really long time, but we're just starting to understand. And that's plastics. And I think all of us can probably look around, look to your right, look to your left, and see if you can find something with plastic. I think I have at least 5 right in front of me. This is a pen. This is a chapstick in plastic. There's always something. And plastics, we say, are everywhere. And that includes thinking about how plastics are also in our seals. And plastics can be big. We say macro, and macro plastics are things like this Frisbee disc right here. And we can have fishing line, and those are plastics as well. So all of this can be things that seals are affected by. And then when they come and become smaller pieces, they can go into the environment and become micro. So why do we care about seals? Hopefully I've given you enough information or support to say seals are really important. So for me, they're sentinels. They tell us about our world. They're really important ecologically in our system. They convince people to go out and be on the water and just enjoy it and go seal watching. And for me also, it's so important is that they increase what we call ocean stewardship, or just caring about our waters and caring about our oceans. And my absolute favorite story is one that I love to share because it's so unusual to people. And this is where thinking and being imaginative and creative is so important. So why am I showing you seals and horses and grass? Well, it turns out that favorite sample of mine, those seals, the poop, actually help the grasses grow, and these horses live and be very healthy. And it's something that people didn't really think about of why they're important. But a seal just being alive and just being there contributes so much to our world. And we're just starting to understand how important they are and why we should really care about them. And there's so much more to learn. And as you can tell, I get very excited about it. And there's so much for you in the future to learn. But with that, I will end and see if there's questions, because I'm sure there's many, and leave you with that sort of idea that anything is still possible. There's still so much we know, even about these large animals. And I'm so excited to find out what we find out more in the future about. So I will stop sharing my screen, because I know I've also reached time. And I'm happy to take questions and share more. And thank you so much for letting me talk to you about this.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. So much information. It's amazing. I always tell Jake and you also, Dr. Dre, that I know I have a pretty cool job, but I just love what you guys do. You guys being out there with Mother Nature, with all these incredible animals, it's just amazing. Okay, Doc. Mr. Natividad, are you available to help us with the Q&A session?
Yeah, if you'd like, you could get some volunteers to come off mic.
Okay.
What I'd like to do is, if you want to raise your hand in the chat, we'll ask you to come off mic and you can ask Dr. Dre your question for today. So I have Mr. Adrian Mendoza. When you come off mic and ask your question. Let me ask him again. Adrian, can you come off?
Did you ever learn about sea lions?
Yes, yeah, I learned about sea lions. I went out to California when that big Pacific blob happened, and I spent a lot of time working with those sea lion pups out there that were really sick and helping them get back to health. I gave them lots of sea lion food, lots of fish, and tried to understand the effects of warming waters on them. So yeah, I did, and I'd love to do more. They're incredible, but they only live on the West Coast. They don't live where I live, so I have to go to where you are in order to study them. Great question.
Awesome. Let's go with Antonio. Antonio, we'd like to come off mute and ask your question. He looks excited.
What do you work as a marine biologist?
Great question. I actually work in a couple of places right now. So I teach at something called the Marine Studies Consortium and at the Shoals Marine Lab. And at the Shoals Marine Lab, I get to do seal research and do photo ID work. And then I also work, and it's really important to me, is a foundation that helps to help other people do science, not just field work on seals, but all kinds of environment and education work as well. So I have multiple hats, I say, in what I can do, because I feel like there's 24 hours in a day and I want to do everything. So good question. Thank you.
Let's go with Logan from Miss Moeller's D2 class. Logan, you want to come off mute, please?
Have you ever put a tracker in a seal?
Have you ever put a tracker on a seal? Like, it broke up a little bit. Was that the question? Yes.
Yes.
Have you ever put a tracker
Yes.
on a seal?
Yeah, so the seal I have, especially on pups, it's much easier for me to do personally. So on those little pups, I've put satellite tags on those animals to see where they go. Yes, I have. Yeah.
Cool.
Good
How about
question.
Jayla? Jayla, do you want to come off mute and ask your question? Oops. Not getting you, Jayla. Do you want to put in the chat? We have one while we're waiting for Jayla, Dr. Dre. We have one that says, why did you pick seals instead of other ocean animals?
I love it. It's such a good question. I picked seals almost by accident, but I was very interested in toxins and contaminants that people make. And where I live on the East Coast, nobody had really asked that question. What is happening to seals? Everybody pays attention to whales, to dolphins, to fish, but nobody was paying attention to the seals. So I like to say I like an underdog and what isn't being asked. And they became really important to me. But growing up on the West Coast, I knew about elephant seals and sea lions. So I had an interest then, but I was really surprised that nobody was really looking at it on the East Coast. So that's how I got interested. Great question.
Let's go. We're going back to Jayla again. Let's ask you to unmute. Got it going, Jayla? We'll try to get you unmuted here. Shucks. I see her moving, but I don't think her mic's picking up. Oh, Ms. Muller has it. Jayla wants to know what inspired you to be a marine biologist. Thank you, Ms. Muller.
Great question. What inspired me? Living by the ocean definitely inspired me. I spent a lot of time just watching and walking on beaches and understanding how important the ocean was to me personally, and then thinking about the vastness and what we don't know. There were just so many questions. There's so many questions that we didn't know about this ocean environment. And that's always been intriguing to me. So I've always been drawn to the ocean, and then really interested in how animals live. And those two things together, looking at marine mammals or the people that are also on those coasts and those animals, really got me interested. And so I started trying to figure out what can I do and how can I help to understand more about what we don't know. Yeah.
All right. I think we may have time for one more. Let me see if we can get, oh, they popped back on. Let's get Noah, can you ask your question?
When did you start learning about seals?
That's a good question. I started learning about seals probably when I was 8 or 9, and I saw one at a marine park. It was a sea lion, and I was fascinated by how these animals moved and that they looked like dogs. And then just really started reading more. And even when I was in high school, was really interested and started learning more about elephant seals, which are closer to there. So I've always been interested and thought they were kind of cool for a very long time, but never thought I'd end up studying them. Never. I didn't think I was. There's so many other things out there.
Sorry, one more question here. She popped back on. You're our last one today. I know you're trying to get on. Let's get you off mute so you ask Dr. Dre your question. Oops, Yuretsi, you there?
What happens if more plastic comes to the oceans?
Oh, great question. I think you're going to have to grow up and be a scientist to help us answer that question. Or you can do lots of other things too, but just ask questions. We don't know. We have to really learn as much as we can now so that we can prevent more bad things from happening and hopefully make good things happen and have less plastic, because they can affect how animals live, what we eat. So we have so much we still need to know and learn about. That's the honest answer to that question. So hopefully we'll figure it out together.
All right. Hey, thanks everyone for your questions. Really good questions. And I know some of you still have your hands raised physically and through Zoom. You can submit your questions and Dr. Dre is going to be available to answer these questions via email. So we're going to get your questions, the list sent to her, and we will get back to you, okay, with an answer. In the meantime, can you all help me by thanking Dr. Dre with a really nice round of applause? She did an amazing job. And this is the second time she joins us. So thank you, Dr. Dre, for coming back. We're going to invite you next year, okay? Because we do Destination Space every year, all right, for a few months. It's not just, you know, an evening like we used to when we got started. Now we do once a week. We may do more than once a week. But anyway, thank you for joining us. Remember that, let me share so that I can close this session. So this is Dr. Dre She's going to be available to answer your questions. So go ahead and submit them. There's a form online. Your teachers know about it. If you can't get to it, ask for help. All right. And remember why we do this, right? We do this because we know there's a few marine biologists out there, right? And so this is why we invite not just NASA engineers and scientists, but every type of scientist out there, because everyone's amazing, right? I know I have a cool job, but I really like what Dr. Dre does, and every opportunity I get to come out with Jake, and I'm gonna see if we can also come out with you, Dr. Dre, to do some activities together. But we do this because we want every single one of you to continue doing a good job with your homework in the classroom. Remember, pay attention, listen to your teachers, listen to all the adults, all the staff in your school. You know, I know you have some incredible principals, so make sure you follow all the rules. And then when you leave school, remember to be an incredible member of your community, because that's also very important, okay? Before you know it, you're gonna be in middle school or high school. And when you get to high school or with other institutions, you can start learning and, you know, hands-on. You can start seeing firsthand what these careers are all about. You know, you're gonna see some presentations, but when you're in high school, if you do all your homework and you get ready, you can come and join us so you can see what it's really like. And then you go to college, and I know every single one of you is going to go to college. And when you graduate from college, you can come and work for us. All right? It's really exciting, but it takes a lot of work, and you have to do your homework and your classwork. And when you get home, you have to do all your chores and listen to all the adults that care about you. Okay? This is why we're doing this. So remember, we're doing this next week again. So come back. Today was a special day. We did it on Wednesday. We usually do this on Tuesdays. So come back next Tuesday, the same channel. Your teachers know the link. All of you guys know the link, right? It's the same link. So we'll see you next Tuesday at the same time. All right? Is that a deal? All right. So everyone, do your work. All right. Remember, that's the only way you can grow up to have a job like this. The only way. There are no elevators to these type of jobs. You have to do the work. Okay. All right, everyone. Have a good day. Take care. Be safe.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Dre. Thank you, Alan Rock. Bye-bye.